let's talk about some books. Today I'm going to tell you all about the books that I read in January, but also the books that I want to read in February. I think I'm being a bit ambitious for my TBR, given that I go to uni and have like 2 part-time jobs. So we'll see how I go with my February TBR. Side note, my hair's red now. I was ginger before. I don't know why I decided to go red, but I just thought it would be fun. Let me know what you think. I think I quite like it. Okay, let's just get started. The first book that I read in January I don't actually have with me because I lent it to a friend. It is called Milk Fed. I did do a reading vlog with it in, so you might have already seen it. My first book of the year, and I rated it 5 stars, I'm pretty sure. Amazing, amazing book. It's about a woman who has a severe eating disorder, so definitely don't read it if you think that's going to trigger you in any way. I did see some reviews saying that she wrote about it in an insensitive way, but personally I don't think it was. I think she wrote about the eating disorder in a humorous way. In my mind, it's a coping mechanism, kind of trying to make light of the situation because it's actually such a heavy thing to carry with you. I found it quite healing. I've struggled with body dysmorphia and food issues in general pretty much since I was like 10, and seeing it out on a page like that kind of put it into perspective for me. So yeah, for me this book actually helped me, but I can also understand why it might not help other people. But aside from that, the main character meets a woman in a yogurt shop, and this woman is in love with food. She eats as much as she wants, she doesn't feel guilty, her family is kind of the same, and those two start to form a friendship that kind of changes into a bit more than a friendship. So it explores coming to terms with your sexuality, religion and sexuality, and also her relationship with her mother. It includes a lot of really major themes, and I thought they were very well done. I don't know, I found myself laughing, I found myself crying. It was just an overall great book. The next book that I read in January I do have with me, and that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. This book I bought because everyone on TikTok was raving about it. Usually I hate hardcover books, but I just couldn't resist the hype, so I didn't want to wait a year until the paperback comes out. This book is advertised as something about friendship, video games, there's love and loss and grief. I think I rated this book 3.5 or 4 stars out of 5. I enjoyed it, but just as always with TikTok hype books, just didn't live up to the hype for me. If I had just found this book on the shelf and read it, I'm sure I would have liked it more. It ended up being a little bit different to what I thought it was going to be. I thought we were going to be in a virtual reality world, but it was actually about 2 video game creators, and they are friends. So through this book we kind of go through their relationship as friends, but also as business partners. Is there also a little bit of love in there? There's also a third character who is the guy's best friend, but then they kind of become a bit of a trio. That introduces a different dynamic. It all started from when the guy was in hospital when he was a child, and the girl becomes friends with him. Then they had a falling out and they meet later in life to create games together. So there's always this underlying thing about why they fell out. There's not actually much else I can say about it. I was expecting a lot more, but I'm still happy with it. So that is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. What else did I read? Okay, so I went through a bit of a slump after this book, and so to try and catch myself up on my reading goal, I cheated a little bit, would you say? I don't know if I'm cheating. They're still books. I decided to try and catch up on my reading goal by reading some graphic novels because pictures are quicker than words, and I read 4 of them. The first graphic novel that I read I actually reread, and that was Saga Volume 1. I already read this last year, maybe the year before, and for some reason I just didn't pick up the second one. I don't know why, so I had to reread this in order to remember what actually happened, and it was just as good as the first time. The illustrations are just amazing, and if you don't know, I do illustration and animation at university. Like, all of this is just so inspiring to me. It's kind of like Romeo and Juliet but aliens. So these two are from different civilizations, would you say? No, different races, I guess. Each of them are at war with each other, but they have a baby and they're trying to run from their families because they don't want to be persecuted. It's a little bit sexy, it's a little bit gory, but yeah, there are like full nude scenes in this as well, so if you're too young, don't read it. Kind of hope they make an animated series out of this, because I would so watch that. And then I also read number 2, and by the cover you can probably tell that this one was even more gory than the first one. But yeah, the story just got even better in this one, and I can't wait to read all of the other ones. They are so expensive though, so I'm like, I don't have the money right now. Okay, and then the next graphic novel that I read was the third Paper Girls. As you can tell, the illustrations in this one, the colours, I think I prefer the like aesthetic of this book, but then I prefer the story of the saga. Paper Girls, not gonna lie, is a little bit confusing. It's all about time travel, which my brain cannot compute very easily. It starts off in the 80s with this group of girls who are paper girls, so it's quite Stranger Things-esque. They see some aliens, they find a time machine, and in this one they get transported back to like kind of caveman era, I guess. Even though the story is really confusing, I just like looking at it, which is why I read the fourth one as well. This one was about like Y2K, and also we see one of the girls like in the future. We see her future self. If you're just looking for a fun story but also just so visually stunning, then Paper Girls is definitely the one. And then in the end of January I actually started this book, The Atlas 6. I did think I was going to finish it, but I haven't, and it's the second week of February. I'm only about halfway through, and within the past 2 weeks I've probably read about 50 pages. Another slump has hit me, guys. That's a lie. It's not a slump, because I do want to read. It's just that I have no time. Uni, my cafe job, friends. I've been going out a lot more than I did last term, because I realised I just wasn't going out at all, and like I want to have fun. That's why I just haven't been reading as much. I'm going to try and make it a habit again to read as soon as I wake up and just before I go to bed, because I haven't been doing that. Annoyingly, I've just been going on my phone again, and I know I just did a video about how to swap your screen time for reading time, so I'm such a hypocrite, but unfortunately I fell back into that. This is the worst addiction I've ever had, and I want to be addicted to books instead. Anyway, this book is about 6 people who have magical powers, and they are all competing for 5 places within this kind of magic society. Obviously there's 6 of them and only 5 places, so one of them is going to be eliminated. The guy, Atlas, who is running this, gives them lots of trials. Each chapter is from a different person's perspective. I love that. I think it keeps the story like going really quickly. It is a little bit confusing because there are 6 main characters. It's hard to like keep in my mind who's who. So far I'm enjoying it. I don't really know where it's gonna go. I think there's gonna be like a big death or something. I don't read a lot of magical books, to be honest. The only one that I really have gotten into is Harry Potter, but this is completely different, and I think that's hard to do. Like when there's one famous magical thing out there, it's difficult to put a different angle on it or a different spin, and yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. So I guess this was the end of my January wrap up and the start of my February TBR. On to the books that I haven't started yet but I would like to read this month. I'm the type of person who can only really read 1 book a week, so don't worry, my TBR isn't like 10 books long. I could never read that much in a month, so I've just got 3 books here that hopefully I can finish, and the first one is called Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Such a beautiful front cover. This book I've actually borrowed from my friend. She gave it to me like 2 months ago and I still haven't read it, so sorry Polly. I'll give it back to you ASAP. It's just the size of it that has kind of intimidated me a bit. I just read the back and it sounds so good. So it's about Cleo, who is a partier. She goes out every night. I think she's in her 20s in New York. I guess she doesn't really have much direction in her life, but then she meets this guy called Frank who's 20 years older than her. Don't get me started on age gaps. I have a lot to say. And he has money and success, everything that she doesn't have. So of course she thinks he's amazing, just so impressive. So they start a romance and it starts really quickly, and I think they just get swept up in it. And there's also some side characters who are going through their own shit as well. This sounds really good. I love a book that is centered around people my age rather than like a high school or people in their 40s with kids and whatever. Not that I can really relate to someone who's living in New York or whatever, but I don't know, it just adds that little extra connection between me and the characters. The next book on my TBR for February is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. Everyone has said to read this. It's supposedly a dark humour, and I really do enjoy dark comedies. Again, this is about a 20-something person who goes to work at a church, and she replaces a receptionist, and someone who knew that old receptionist emails her saying, hey, like whatever, blah blah blah, not knowing that that receptionist unfortunately died. So I think Gilda, the main character, pretends to be the dead receptionist and like creates a relationship with this person. That must get very complicated, especially when the police discover suspicious circumstances around the dead receptionist's death. So I think Gilda must get kind of dragged into that. It does sound a bit like a crime novel as well as a funny book, so I think I'm gonna like this one because that's very up my street. And then the last book that is on my TBR for February is an autobiography. It's I'm Glad My Mum Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Jeanette was in iCarly and also Sam and Cat. Pretty much everyone has read this book already. Basically, Jeanette's mum unfortunately was very abusive. Jeanette just talks about her trauma and how it's affected her. I think this will be a really great book to read. I think it's really important because I think there's just this thought in society that mothers are just so caring and they love their children and will do everything for them and they can do no wrong, but in reality that is far from the truth, and unfortunately she experienced not a great childhood because of her mum. Somehow Jeanette finds the humour as well, so apparently it's also a little bit funny. I'm very excited to read this. I really like Jeanette as a person and I really liked her when I used to watch her on Nickelodeon, so to get an insight into her life, I think it's very brave of her to open up to everyone about this, and I'm sure it will have helped a lot of people as well. That is the last book on my TBR for February. Let me know if you have a favourite book that you read in January and anything that you're looking forward to reading this month. And yeah, I will see you in my next video. Bye!